In this talk, I brought Emilio with me, and Emilio is a data scientist with the evangelism team, and what we want to do in the next 30 minutes is to actually, hopefully, explain to you how you can build your own agent with KNIME and continue the demystification of agents in KNIME a little bit further. And for that, Emilio has built a series of workflows, and we will go through them, workflow by workflow, and hopefully afterwards you can go home, open analytics platform, and build your own first little agent yourself. Emilio, why don't you get started?
Sure. Thank you, Christian. So yes, the goal of this talk is actually to demystify, as you said, what is behind an agent, or like not only what is an agent, but actually we would like you to think that after this talk, hopefully you can go home and think, okay, I can create my own agent with KNIME without that much of an hassle. So for that, we have created a couple of workflows that I will show you now. And the first one that I want to show you is I want to call it the minimal agent. So it's slightly agentified workflow. So it's the first step towards being an agent. And this is the feedback handler agent. So in this little use case, what I have done is to define a user input. And then what I want to do, I want to kind of automate the handling of my feedback, of the feedback around my products. So in this case, I receive feedback that look like this. For example, I love this vacuum cleaner, it really sucks. And what I want to do is to automatically analyze this feedback and then take a certain decision according to the sentiment of that feedback. In this case, I want to create a discount code if the sentiment is positive. So if I receive a nice feedback, then I want to say thank you to the user and say, this is a discount code for you. But if the sentiment of the feedback is negative, and then I want to escalate that feedback to support and reply to my user, I'm sorry to hear that, we'll get back to you soon. So for that, this small agent, what it does, it takes the feedback, and then with a very simple prompt, I ask the LLM to analyze that feedback and to give me the sentiment and identify the product that was inside that feedback. So in this case, the feedback, I loved the vacuum cleaner, it really sucks, is classified as positive, and then the product is also extracted. Now what I do, I manually route this analysis to one tool or another by using the classic KNIME nodes that we've used so far. So I basically extract the feedback, I kind of unpack that thing into a table like this one, and then I use a simple variable expression and a case switch to say that if the feedback is positive, then go to this branch here and execute the tool discount code generator. Now, the discount code generator is just an action tool that receives some feedback. In this case, what I pass to the tool is the feedback and then the product code, and then generates, you can see the output here, generates a discount code. So it's an action tool like that. And what I'm able to do like this is that as soon as I receive a positive feedback, this tool gets called, and then I can get back to the user with thank you, and this is the discount code for you.
Okay, so in this case, you really use the chat model, the large language model, basically only in quotes for classifying the input into positive and negative, right? Exactly. Sentiment analysis.
It's a more complex sentiment analysis, let's say. Yeah, exactly. So it's not rocket science. That's why I said it's a minimal agent. But for that, so the downside of this approach, I didn't show it, but of course, if I change something here and I say that I hated the LC, the rest can stay the same. Then I close it. Then, of course, this is going to be classified as hopefully negative. Yes, it's negative, and then I route the workflow to the other part. This part doesn't get called, and then I can get back to the user saying, I'm sorry, this is the ticket that I opened for you. I'll get back to you. something like that. Now, what is the problem with this approach? The downside is that I know the tools that I want to call, but I need to create those tool call. I need to create this switch by myself and call one tool every time that something happens. So let's say that it doesn't scale that easily. If, for example, for some reason I also want to classify the sentiment as negative, for example, and call a third tool, then I need to change the system prompt and do another tool call here, manually route them, manually check the case, and basically edit my workflow. Okay. So shall we do a step further and make it a little bit more agentic?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, for that, this is a more agentic version of that workflow. There is one thing that I want you to notice, which is that now the chat model prompter has 3 input ports. The first input port is the classic that we know, receive the chat model that we have connected to, basically. The other input port is the conversation history, so basically the feedback, in this case, that I have received. But the third input port is the interesting one. In the third input port, I receive the tool definitions. And what does it mean that I received the tool definition in the chat model prompter? Is that in here, in this component, what I've done, I have defined the tools that the chat model prompter can pick. In this case, define the tool means that I give a name of a tool, I give a description of the tool. So in this case, the discount code generator is a tool that generates a discount code for an happy user. And the other thing that I define is basically JSON, in this case, where I put that description, I put the tool name, and then I have the properties. And the properties is where I define the arguments that that tool accepts in input. In this case, the tool discount code generator accepts in input the product code, while the support escalator accepts in input the product and the feedback. It's basically defining the interface of that tool.
Emilio, can you talk a little bit more about the tool description itself and why it's so important?
Yes, actually, the tool description is the key part of this definition. So if I write a very nice tool description, then this is what the LLM is going to use inside to decide which tool is going to pick. So what I've done here is that I provided a slightly different feedback. And now the LLM is not going to respond with, is not going to produce some text, but what it's going to produce is the tool name, a tool call ID, and a tool call argument. So the chat model prompter has read the descriptions and has understood that for that specific feedback, it needs to call the support escalator because the feedback was negative. Now, what do I do with this information now? Basically, I can use the information of the tool name and the tool argument to parameterize a call workflow that is able to call that tool that the LLM has picked. So let me repeat it again. The chat model prompter receives a feedback. I can show you the system prompt if you want, where I say that you're a support agent, analyze the feedback, and pick the tool to decide which tool you want to call to continue basically this operation. Then the chat model prompter replies with a tool name. I retrieve that tool, so because I know where the tool lives. Basically, in this case, I have the location of the tool, and then I use that parameter to parameterize as a parameter to the call workflow row based. In this case, so I call the tool, which we will see is just a workflow. I call that tool with that parameter and with the argument that the LLM has produced for me. So with this argument here, the product and the feedback, and this JSON has been produced by the LLM, I call the tool, and then I can continue the rest of my workflow.
I think there's a lot of stuff you have to do, like use the call workflow to actually call the tool, etc. But the real magic or the real smart part is in the tool descriptions and in the system prompt, I believe, right?
Yes, that's correct. Actually, creating this workflow, okay, you need to understand a little bit the call workflow row base, and maybe you need to kind of retrieve and do kind of a little bit of manipulation. But the workflow is not super complex. the real complexity, the real programming, actually, is in the system prompt and in the tool description. If you don't optimize that, then probably the agent is not going to behave that well, let's say.
Okay, so these were like two simple tools, so to speak, but we heard earlier of data-aware tools. Do you also have an example for that one?
Yes, we have prepared an example, which is actually something that Michael already shown this morning. Michael shown the Ask Me Anything chatbot. What we have done here is to create a simpler version of that for you to show that basically tools can also provide not only actions, as we have seen now with the support escalator and the discount generator, but tools can also be data aware. So tools can also be used by the LLM to retrieve some data, let's say, to retrieve some information.
Yeah. So
in this example, which looks similar to the previous one, let's say the workflow looks similar. In this example, this is the Ask Me Anything agent. So my chat model prompter is instructed to have access to an internal tools to assist with answering some questions. And it's exactly what Michael has shown this morning. So I have a user interface here when I can ask something, for example, does Jack Sparrow work for KNIME? And then my LLM has access to a list of 4 tools. It has the company insights retriever, the KNIME employees lookup, the KNIME user info, and the support ticket. And then there is also the relative description of those 4 tools. The company information retriever retrieves details inside about the specific company. The KNIME employee lookup retrieves current or ex-KNIME employee, etc. And together with that, I also have the classic tool definition, so which is a JSON, again, where the tool knows how to, the LLM will read how to call that specific tool. So what I ask my chat model prompter to do now is to take this question and then pick one of those tools to be able to give me an answer to that. In this case, I asked, does Jack Sparrow work for KNIME? And what the chat model prompter replies is, again, a call for tool, let's say. And it points me to the demo tool, KNIME employee lookup, with the tool call argument, Jack Sparrow. So from the question that I gave the LLM provides the tool that it wants to call and a JSON that I can use to call that tool, basically. What happens inside here is exactly what I've shown before, just a little bit more, because this is to iterate multiple tools if there are, but this is the core part. Again, a call workflow parameterized with the tool location and the tool argument. And then after I've called it, I format the output, and then what I get is basically the reply of that tool. In this case, the KNIME employee lookup gives me a JSON with all the information about Jack Sparrow. That apparently is a researcher, worked as a scientist in the technology department. But this is not where my agent should stop, right? Because now the agent has all the information that it needs, so I need to call it again to formulate an answer, to elaborate the response with the information retrieved by the tool. So I prompt my chat model prompter one more time with all that information, and I get the final answer that, yes, Jack Sparrow is an ex-employee of KNIME, having worked as a scientist in the technology department. Did you know that?
Well,
maybe
cool.
Before I joined.
So just for me to recap that really quick. So you have a list of data-aware tools, as we learned this morning, right? You took those tools with a nice description, each tool, I guess, again, you provide it to the LLM as tools to use, given a certain query, and now the LLM chooses the right tool, you call the tool, and then you provide the answer to another LLM, which calls another tool, right? So tool after tool, so to speak. But what if you have a more complex plan? Let's say, what if you want to call a tool, and maybe another tool, and maybe one more tool, and really something, building up on each other? What do you do then?
Yes, that's probably the question that a lot of you already have now. Like, why do I need 2 chat model prompters if I can use a loop? So this is the the ultimate agent, basically, starting from the minimal one. This is the most complex one, but it's actually the same as before. It's just that now I build a loop around it. So I call the chat model prompter, let me zoom in. I call the chat model prompter once with my question. In this case, the question was, who opened the last support ticket for the Hitman Hotel Group, which is one of our customers? And then, using the recursive loop, I basically call a tool, put that information in the loop, give it again to the chat model prompter, and then the chat model prompter is able to decide, do I need another tool call, or do I have enough information to reply to this question? So what happens now is that the human asks this, who opened the last support ticket, and the AI says, well, the first thing that I need is to call the company insights retriever tool with the argument, what is the domain of the Hitman Hotel Group? So that's the first information that the chat model prompter is trying to retrieve. I call the tool here, and then I get the answer, that the domain is hitmanhotel.com. In the next iteration, then, the AI has this information from the tool, and now says, OK, now I need the support ticket with the parameter who opened the last support ticket and the domain hitmanhotel.com. So this argument, basically, for the second tool call has been built with the information received from the previous tool call. So that's how the LLM, that's how the agent, let's say, builds the information, put it together to basically to formulate the answer. Because then the next time when I have, let me open it a little bit more, when I have the information from the first tool and then the information from the second tool, the LLM can say, OK, enough. Don't call any more tools. So you can see that now it doesn't populate those 3 columns. And this is the final answer. The last support ticket for the Hitman Hotel Group was opened by John Wick, because that's information that it receives from the tool. Actually, this is the information that it's elaborating from.
One really nice thing here, what you see and what you didn't mention explicitly, you just take it as granted, is that you can actually follow the trace of the agent tool calls, right? You have an understanding what happened actually. This tool, that tool, this tool, that tool, this tool, and it's not like totally black boxed, so to speak.
Yes, exactly. You can see basically all the conversation, which, by the way, happens behind the scenes. So your user will just see let's say, will just prompt the question in this case, and then in the end, you can just isolate the final row. So if you don't want to disclose how the agent resonate, then you can hide it, but it's nice to have it.
Some kind of a tracing or auditing of what the agent does. So you talked a lot about tools. Do you want to show some tools?
Yes, I think it's time, because otherwise people might not believe us. So tools, I'm gonna disappoint you, but tools are just callable workflows. So this is the company insights retriever. I think this is the one that the agent used to get the domain of the Hitman Hotel Group, and there's really nothing special behind besides being in this case it's an intelligent tool, so it has an LLM prompter inside. But the key part of becoming a tool is that it must be callable. So it must have an input and an output, so that I can call it from the agentic, from the agent workflow, basically. And the input in this case is a JSON input, but it could also be a workflow service input or any other input node that you want. The important thing is that you should describe, again, the workflow. The tool description is the key part, and also you should define the arguments correctly, so that the agent is able to formulate the call correctly to the tool. Yes.
Cool. Do you have more tools for us?
Yes, I have another tool, actually, because then people think that we need to use AI everywhere. But actually, there are also more, I don't want to call it less intelligent, but like more classic tools, let's say, where there is no AI at all. This tool, this is the KNIME Employees Lookup tool that receives the name that you're looking for and then does a similarity search in our database of ex and current employees, and then just retrieves the one that you're looking for and gives you all the information about that employees, in this case about Jack Sparrow.
Okay, so basically here we are really playing out the strength of KNIME, right? We can combine from different data sources, we can aggregate the data, pre-process the data, and then basically make a tool out of that, as shown this morning by Michael, and deploy it to our agent as is.
That's correct.
Okay, fantastic. So that's nice. We have now built a nice agent. We have seen how to build these tools. We have put everything together. How do we productionize that?
Yeah, so what I've shown you so far, actually, if you build a little bit of a user interface behind it, then it becomes a nice, in this case, like a nice chatbot, for example. And then you can move it to KNIME Business Hub, as always, or to KNIME Community Hub as well. And then you can execute it, deploy it as a data app, or deploy it as a service, as a schedule, or whatever you prefer.
Cool. So where can we actually find more info? So after your talk, then when they come back tomorrow to their laptop on the analytics platform.
So we promise that you should be confident that you can also do it yourself. For that, we have prepared a slide, if I can have it. Maybe. Yes, so here we put together some resources that you can use to actually get started with your building agent journey. So all the workflows that I've shown in this demo are at this URL. You're going to receive the slides, so you don't need to take pictures if you don't want to. So if you go to this URL, they are publicly on Community Hub. You can download them, you can run them, and have a look what happens behind the scene on your own. Plus, there's going to be the AI for Data Analytics online course in April. The registration is already open, so if you want to upskill yourself, we will not only talk about agents, but actually we will start from what is an LLM, how do I call it, how do I install the extension, all the basic stuff up to the agents. And plus, have a look at the KNIME blog, because there have already been published a couple of blog posts around agents, but more are coming probably today already, or even tomorrow, or probably tomorrow, about all those use cases that you've seen on stage today. So those are some resources, and more will be available in the next days.
Thank you very much, Emilio.
Thank you.
Thank you.